Today I'm going to show you how to build a gaming PC that, if we're honest, it's not going to take you to the moon, it's not going to blind your opponents with its RGB, but it's just going to work, and it's going to be a really nice gaming experience at 1080p without having to take out a small loan for it. Hey everyone, this is Frank here, welcome back to Jaeger Tech. Like I said in the intro, today's gaming PC is going to be a really nice, simple build for you to put together in 2018 that isn't going to break the bank. So it's going to come in at about £350 here in the UK, or about $450 US. And it's going to be really simple to put together. We're not dealing with any aftermarket coolers, it's just the Intel stock cooler, it's really easy to put on. We're not dealing with a load of extra power connectors or custom cables or things like that. All your cables are going to be really easy to run, really easy to manage. There's just nothing too fancy or over the top here, so you're just going to get pure gaming performance. So just quickly, if you're looking to build a budget gaming PC in 2018, then you have a couple of options on the low end. And I talk about this more in my Ryzen APU buyer's guide, which you can check out up here. But basically, on the low end, you have the new Ryzen APUs, and they are a CPU and a GPU combined in one, so you don't have to buy a dedicated graphics card. And a full system using one of those will run you about $350-ish, and you would get a pretty nice gaming experience out of it. However, what we're looking at today is if you want to spend a little bit more money than that. So we're going to save a bit of money by going with a low tier Intel CPU and coupling it with a much higher tier graphics card than what you get in the Ryzen APUs. So in this case, we're going for the GTX 1050, and this causes the price to be bumped up to around the $450 mark, like I said, but you get a lot more performance for your money there. And a system like this is going to last you for a good while. If you look at these sort of tiered products that have come out in previous generations, then you can see that they hold up pretty well in later years, and you can expect to get a good few years out of this gaming PC. Now let's quickly move on to the specs. So I'm going to be discussing each component that you need to buy in order to build this gaming PC, and specifically what you need to look out for in that component so you know you're getting the right one. So like I said, at the heart of our system is going to be a lower tier Intel CPU. Now the only thing you need to look out for in one of these CPUs is that it has 2 cores and 4 threads. So that is the Pentium lineup, but you need to make sure you get one of the 4-threaded versions because modern games are going to need to use those 4 threads in order to run properly. So the cheapest one you can get of this tier of CPUs is the Pentium G4560, and this runs for about £50 today on sites like Amazon and Overclockers UK. As well as that, it's going to come with its own Intel stock cooler. Now, the Intel stock cooler nowadays, it's not winning any prizes for performance, but it is winning prizes for value because it comes bundled with your CPU, and when you're cooling something like a Pentium G4560, you don't need the utmost in performance, but it's going to come with thermal paste pre-applied, so all you have to do is sit it on top of your CPU and push those pins through the holes in the motherboard, then plug in your fan. It's so easy to use, and it comes for free. Next up is you're going to need a motherboard to seat that CPU in. And the motherboards you want to be looking for, the ones that you can always get for the cheapest, is the H110 series of motherboards. Now, these are technically Skylake motherboards, and the CPU is Kaby Lake. And you might see that people are saying you have to update the BIOS on the motherboard in order to use it with the Kaby Lake CPU, but you don't have to worry about that nowadays. All of the new motherboards that you buy that are H110 come with a brand new BIOS already on there. It's going to work with your CPU immediately, and you don't have to worry about updating it. As for which H110 motherboards you want to get, literally the cheapest one you can find. It really doesn't matter. I ended up getting this H110 from ASUS because it was open box, and I only paid £35 for this. But I wouldn't recommend going open box because you don't get a manual or an IO shield or SATA cable sometimes. And you can get them for around £35 on sale all the time. Next up is RAM, and this is a really easy one. All you need to do is get 8 GB of DDR4. And that is it. Don't look for fancy lights or fancy heat sinks on them because it just costs more money for 0 extra performance. Even the speed of your RAM really doesn't matter that much. just get 8 GB of DDR4. And as you can see here, I picked up a really cheap single stick from Crucial that cost me, I think, about £68. So you can generally get these for around the £70 mark or just under if you keep your eye out. And it's just a plain 8 GB stick of RAM that's just gonna work. Next up is the real meat of our build, the GPU. So what we went for this time is a GTX 1050. Now you can get the lower tier GT 1030, but the GTX 1050 is a really good performer at 1080p, and we'll see that in the benchmarks later. But as for which one you should get and how much it's gonna cost, again, the cheapest one you can find. All the GTX 1050s are going to perform rather similar, so don't worry about which brand, ASUS this and Gigabyte that and the different models, just a GTX 1050, and it's going to run you about £110. That's why I picked this one up for. Their standard retail, you can get them all day, every day, is £120, and you can pick them up for £110 really easily by just keeping your eye out a bit. Now storage, this is an interesting one because you can go for like a 500 GB hard drive and save yourself a few pounds, but I really don't think it's worth it nowadays. Just get a 1 TB, which will cost you around 35 to 40 pounds. So I picked up this one and it cost me 35 pounds. Basically, look for anything from Hitachi, Toshiba, Seagate or Western Digital. Any 1 TB drive from those is going to work perfectly. In addition, what I'm throwing in here, and this is my personal choice, you don't have to go for this if you want to save a bit of more cash, but I've picked up a couple of these cheap SSDs from AliExpress recently, and this is a 60 GB SSD from a brand called Goldenfir, and it cost me £15. And I did a review of this, but you can check that out if you want. Simply put, they're fantastic. It's an amazing addition to this build because that is enough space to put Windows 10 on there with all of your programs, as long as you install all of your games and your files onto the hard drive. And it's gonna take your PC to the next level in terms of its snappiness and usability in just, you know, browsing the internet, loading up programs. It's gonna become so amazing, and I'd really recommend picking up a cheap SSD that's 60 or 120 GB, and it's only going to cost you between 50 and 30 pounds for those. Now we're onto the power supply, and you're going to hear a lot of stuff about power supplies, but basically you're going to want to get about a 400 watt unit for a system like this because you can save a bit of money going for 400 watts over 500 watts, and this system, I'm going to show you later, it sips power, okay? It's going to use so little power that a 400 watt is genuinely overkill for the amount of power it's going to consume. I picked up one from Aerocool, which is considered a pretty budget, kind of crappy brand. But here's the thing, if you're using a 400 watt power supply for a system that pulls about 100 watts, generally speaking, it's just so not stressed that you really don't have to worry about it being a top tier, top quality product. Also, the days of power supplies blowing up and burning down your house are really behind us. Even the cheaper units aren't going to do that. So I picked up an Aerocool 400 watt unit and it cost me, I think, £22, which you just can't complain about really. Pick up one of these cheaper, more budget brands that you've seen other people picking up and you're going to have a perfectly good experience with it. The final piece of the puzzle here is the case. Now, I went with a BitFenix Nova. The Nova is one of my favorite budget cases, and I wouldn't pay more than £25 for it brand new because I don't think it's worth it for any more than that, but you can get it retail for £20 to £25 all the time. It comes in white, it comes in black, it comes with or without a window. We're going with the non-windowed version this time. Basically because it was super cheap, and I picked this one up open box for only £15. And the case is something where I would say open box is a perfectly good option to go with because unless it's obviously broken, in which case send it back, it's going to work perfectly fine. It's not like one of these electrical components where you don't know how much life is left in it. It's a physical thing. If it isn't broken, then it's going to be fine. So open box is going to save you a lot of money here. And £15 for a case is insanely good, especially the Nova, which is just, it's easy to work in. You know, it has a lot of those budget case quirks. It's not a top tier product, but for the value for money, it's really hard to argue with. It's easy to work in. It has a really clean look to it, okay? It's understated, but it's not gaudy and it's not going to fall to pieces on you. So that brings us up to the £350 mark, or about $450 if you were to put this build together in the US. And we get a lot of PC for the money that we're spending here. So we're going to get on to the juicy build process in just a second, and during that I'm going to be giving you a couple of tips on how to cable manage some of these cheaper components to make your build look pristine. And after that, we're going to move swiftly on to the benchmarks. So I'm going to be benchmarking some of those really popular titles. So that's going to be Fortnite and CSGO. So you can get an idea of how it's going to perform in those popular games. Hint, it's pretty damn good. And I'm also going to be benchmarking The Witcher 3 and PUBG because, as well as being quite popular, those games are just very stressful on the system. So if it's able to run those no problem, then you don't have to worry about it being able to run any title that you want to play on it.
Could swear it's been 700 degrees in here since you came in. I could swear that this room has been running out of air and now it's starting to spin. You make me feel kind of bad, kind of good, kind of everything, yet it doesn't feel like it should. You make me feel kind of wrong, kind of right, kind of anything, and I would change it if I could. I swear I'm hitting the floor. I could swear that my stomach just sunk a meter. I'll be dead if I take any more. You make me feel kind of bad, kind of good, kind of everything, yet it doesn't feel like it should. You make me feel kind of wrong, kind of right, kind of anything, and I would change it if I could.
So there we have it. The building experience of this PC was really nice. It was so easy to put together. The BitFenix Nova is such an easy case to work in, and when you're not dealing with high-end components like liquid coolers and stuff like that, it's just so easy to put a PC together. And I would really recommend this if you're looking to get into PC gaming on a budget. It was so easy to do and you get such a good gaming experience out of it. I mean, look at the benchmarks. We got 185 FPS average in CSGO. That is a phenomenal frame rate, even for CSGO, with a budget PC like this. And then with the other games, we got PUBG, The Witcher 3, and Fortnite, and they were all pulling in about 70 FPS average, which is a really nice frame rate, even with something like PUBG and The Witcher 3 that are really more difficult to run. And like with Fortnite, the minimum FPS was like 60 FPS. So like you wouldn't even notice any change in frame rate. It was so consistent. And again, with The Witcher 3, I mean, like a 40 to 50 FPS minimum is really very difficult to notice. And that was only in like those like intense fight scenes where a lot of things is going on. You have a lot of people fighting each other. And even then, it was really difficult to notice those drops in frame rate. And man, PUBG, I mean, that game, it just brings gaming PCs to their knees because it's so badly optimized that it just consumes all of your resources. But even in that, at 1080p medium settings, which is a really nice experience by the way, we were getting about 70 FPS average and about 40 FPS on the minimums, which is really respectable and it's really playable. The thing is with FPS, it's more than just the user experience and like fluidity of the gameplay. If you don't have a consistent FPS in a game like PUBG, it hinders your ability to play competitively and just makes the game kind of not worth playing with something like PUBG. But with this PC, with only like a minimum of 40 FPS, it really doesn't hinder you that much at all, and you can expect to have a really nice competitive experience. And as for the power consumption, I'm sure some of you are still a bit worried about using a cheaper 400 watt unit for this system and are kind of concerned with how much power it might pull. But I did the test, and at full CPU and GPU load, so this is basically the whole system maxed out, we were pulling 120 watts from the wall. So that means that the power supply, because pulling from the wall means that you have to factor in the power supply's inefficiency, the power supply is actually outputting more like 100 watts, which is such a like insignificant amount of power that a 400 watt unit just isn't going to sweat. So I really wouldn't worry about going for a cheaper 400 watt unit. Just a final thing I wanted to note was the screen cap footage from the gameplay I actually recorded on this PC using NVIDIA's Shadowplay. So that means the PC was running the game as well as recording and encoding that footage. And you might notice that it's not that bad. And yeah, it's not, the output footage isn't as smooth as it could be in some cases, but if you were to tweak the Shadowplay settings, so, you know, some of those more intense titles, if you were to bring down the quality a little bit, then you could legitimately use this PC to do some basic game footage web content to upload. And it would be a pretty good experience. You know, you're not going to be doing some high-end video editing, but just stitching some gameplay clips together with some voiceovers or things like that is really possible on a PC like this. And that legitimately shocked me. I really didn't think it was going to be able to manage that. I just wanted to let you know that is what was happening in those games. It was all run on this. It wasn't an external capture card at all. So this gaming PC is a really great performer for the amount that you spend on it, and I would really recommend it if you're looking at spending this kind of a budget on a gaming PC. And also, even if you're a novice or someone who's never built a PC before, this one is so easy to put together that I would really recommend it for a starter gaming PC. Just look up a couple of YouTube tutorials on how to build a PC, and they're going to make it so easy for you. And as soon as you get to grips with it, you're going to realize just how easy it is. And afterwards, you're going to have such an amazing experience with it. But I think that is it for today, guys. Thank you all very much for watching. Please rate this video down below, and if you did like it, please check out my channel because I have plenty more videos like this and plenty more content coming up in the future. So do consider subscribing to my channel. But that's it for now. This has been Frank Jaeger with Jaeger Tech. Have a good one.